Hello everyone, and welcome to the 11th episode of the Corny universe. In the last episode, we examined the similarities between the change that humanity is currently experiencing with the last paradigm shift from monotheist religions to materialist science. Changing belief systems has always been uncomfortable for humans. Put yourself in the shoes of someone living in the 15th century. His whole life, meaning and purpose being directed towards securing entry to heaven. Most of that person's thoughts and actions were concentrated on that goal. Now, someone comes along and says that the Bible is just a bunch of fairy tales and that heaven doesn't exist. But if that is true, what is the meaning of life? If God does not exist, then there is no more divine punishment for killing, raping, and stealing? No, I cannot accept that. Humanity will sink into chaos. And of course, humanity nearly did if we look at the world wars and other horrors of the 20th century. It took time for humanity to develop self-imposed codes of acceptable ethical conduct to replace the fear of divine punishment. Today, many people also resist moving beyond materialist science since their entire lives rely on that belief system, paradigm, or worldview. And yet, the signs of the limitations of science are everywhere. Science itself has evolved beyond Newtonian physics, where the universe is basically a giant pool table with balls colliding into each other. Everything could be explained by a string of linear cause and effect relationships. Today, your quantum this and quantum that tends to represent your reality as a giant soup of energy which takes certain temporary forms like an atom or a molecule. There are no more certainties, only probabilities. Chaos theory in mathematics also breaks the neat relationship between cause and effect. And then, of course, there's the mystery of consciousness. Where does it come from? How is it that a giant sack of unconscious molecules like your brain produces the experiences of consciousness? It is most ironic that such a brain, which is determined by a bunch of chemical reactions, could come up with a concept such as free will and then argue that it doesn't exist. Just think of how ridiculous that is. A chemically determined brain which somehow can think about the concept of freedom only to conclude that it isn't free to think by itself. The move away from materialist science will permanently alter your obsession and relationship to the concept of truth. You see, thus far, humanity has always shifted from what it deemed to be a false belief system to a true belief system. For instance, the polytheist gods being pagan and barbaric myths, when the only truth was in the holy book handed down by the one true God. And with materialist science, the truth can only be found by respecting empirical methodology, by devising theories and experiments which can be tested and replicated by others to check their validity. But ultimately, why is humanity so obsessed with finding the truth? Because it wants to remain like an innocent child, where the child is powerless in the face of reality, where reality is something immutable and unchangeable which imposes itself upon the child, who therefore has a passive relationship to that reality, incapable of affecting or altering it, and thus also no responsibility for what happens in that reality. Whether in the form of a god who has written rules which impose themselves on humanity, or via the immutable and unquestionable laws of physics, chemistry, and biology which impose themselves upon humanity, it is the same principle. And what benefit do humans gain from this? Not having to take responsibility for their actions, since they can be justified by an immutable outside reality. Humanity has abused the concept of truth for a long time. For instance, dubious and fake scientific studies which showed that people of a certain color were more savage or less intelligent than others was an excuse for slavery and treating certain people like animals. I'm not responsible for treating these purple-faced people like animals. There is a study which proves they are animals, so I am merely acting in accordance with the truth. Today, governments and scientists hide behind the same arguments. We are not responsible for the repressive measures, vaccine mandates, and all of the negative consequences because a bunch of research papers say we don't have a choice. Finding the truth is very convenient because it allows you to get rid of any responsibility for your actions, or in other words, pretend like you didn't have a choice. I had no choice, God told me to do it, turns into I had no choice, a research paper said it was the only possible course of action. Of course, real science and real scientists never go as far as saying that they hold the truth and then there is no choice and no responsibility, just like real priests who understand the core message of the Bible don't burn witches or go about stoning homosexuals. But since humanity won't let go of a belief system until they have an objective reason to do so, they need the help of zealous priests, power-hungry politicians, and blindly obsessed scientists to move on. In the next episode, we will explore what moving beyond the concept of truth actually looks like. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And Corny will tell you the ultimate truth in the next episode. Bye.